It is a great pleasure for me to introduce the winner of the 2021 CNS Fred Kavli Distinguished Career Contributions Award, Robert Desimone. You know, Bob and I go way back. He got his PhD in Charlie Gross's lab 10 years before me. And from 1990 to 95, I did my postdoc in Bob's lab at the NIMH. Then later in 2005, Bob moved to MIT, where we are colleagues and friends. In short, Bob and I are mishpucha. So introducing him now is a unique pleasure for me. It's also a unique pleasure because Bob is most deserving of this award. He is a founder and architect of much of modern cognitive neuroscience and our understanding of cortical function. There are many highlights and discoveries I can point to. To my mind, one watershed moment was Bob's discovery of the neural basis of covert attention. Up until then, studies of visual attention involved motor preparation. Neural responses to a stimulus were enhanced when an animal was going to move its eye or move its hand to that stimulus. Bob added the covert part of covert attention by removing the motor component. And this was the first real look into the middle of cortical function, revealing mechanisms that were neither input nor output. After a series of landmark papers, Bob and John Duncan proposed the bias competition model of attention. And it has been enormously influential, a foundation of our current understanding of the neural basis of attention. Bob's cutting-edge work on attention continues to this day. It includes major new discoveries such as, for example, his studies of how synchronized brain rhythms help enhance processing of attended visual inputs. This is work he began with then postdoc Pascal Fries. Bob's work on attention alone would be enough to justify this award. But there is more, much more. Bob was part of the team that discovered face cells. These are neurons that preferentially process information about faces. And that discovery has now blossomed into a major subfield of neuroscience. With Charlie Gross and Eric Schwartz, Bob discovered neurons with object invariance. These are neuron populations whose signaling is impervious to changes in appearance that don't change the identity of an object, things like change in size or location. Now, a bit of context might be helpful. At that time, all we knew about visual processing in cortex was that primary visual cortex broke a scene down into little bits, little pieces like edges and line segments. Hubel and Wiesel seemed to have solved vision, and it was unclear whether we really needed anything else other than a memory store. But we now know the answer is invariance. All that extra cortex outside of primary visual cortex was there so our brain can recognize things as being the same regardless of how we see them. Bob also worked with Leslie Ungerleider, another giant, and she left us all too soon. Bob worked with Leslie to map the organization and anatomical connections of much of the extrastriate visual cortex. Tom Albright and Bob published the first report of columns outside of primary visual cortex, in this case for motion in area MT. Bob worked with Stan Shine to conduct the first comprehensive studies of shape and color processing in cortex. And Bob also discovered that the temporal cortex retains memories of recent visual inputs by suppressing or enhancing future responses to those same inputs. These studies and others have had a huge impact. You know, it's not that long ago that our understanding of cortex was focused on the edges of processing, if you will, focused on initial sensory processing and on motor output. The middle was so-called association cortex, where sensory meets motor, presumably. But it was largely unknown. There be dragons. Well, it's no longer terra incognita. We have the lay of the land, and we are learning more and more about the cognitive stuff that happens in the middle of cortex. And Bob was a major guide in getting us to where we are now. So please join me in congratulating Robert Desimone, the winner of the 2021 Fred Kavli Distinguished Career Contributions Award. Congratulations, Bob.